Hello, it's Krista here with you today with some strange lighting and kind of a pretty quilted background. I know it's been a while since I've done a post, and I've been dealing with some things around me and with my family and my children, kind of getting into the depths while still studying addiction, mostly a lot right now, although a little bit on food addiction here and there, mostly on drug and alcohol addiction. I find myself, while meditating daily, getting in touch deeper and deeper with myself and the things going on around me. And things kind of seem to be presenting themselves lately. And I find myself in a place now where I am drawn back to my family. And I'm talking like my mother and father, and especially to my children, bonding once again at home for a while. Just seeing myself here and knowing that there is something behind it that needs to be healed big time. And there's such a huge problem right now with two of my children with drugs and alcohol. I'm not surprised, and I'm actually kind of relieved to finally find myself back here at this place where I'm confronted not only with a narcissistic family, but financially wrapped up in a lot of different things, trying to get through school and getting some help from my family during this, but also kind of helping to consult and coach throughout my stay here. And it is nerve-wracking because drugs and alcohol are not easy to deal with. And if you have any problems of your own, maybe if you're in a state of your own recovery, like you will always be, but in the first part, when you're just learning about it, all these things are new to you, and then you find yourself learning along with other certain people, whether it's through AA groups or just friends that are recovering, or just emotionally stabilizing if you have a mental condition like borderline, mild to moderate borderline, or cases of CPTSD, bipolar, and so forth, which they're learning nowadays that a lot of mental disorders are linked to CPTSD, which starts in childhood in more or less dysfunctional types of homes. Uh, no matter from mild to extreme, whatever it may be that you are diagnosed with today, um, don't be ashamed. I know that's really hard for us because when we do come from dysfunctional families, we are caught in this web of not very much self-esteem. And maybe we can leave our homes and go out and find ourselves on our own. But we're still left in the dark with no education on how to form real relationships or friendships with others or partners. And we find ourselves again, going back out and having to find new partners or new places to hang out and so forth. This is a real time of reflection for myself, and I love to teach others that are learning too, as so many of you have. I'm so delighted to have your company, and just it's can be very stressful at times too. Today, my son is coming home. He has went through kind of a time where living among in a bigger home where it's still kind of narcissistically run, um, we kind of got split during the whole thing, and he has really had a really bad episode of fighting with my parents days ago, and getting into some really a bad scene out there. Um, it gets hard for me to talk about when I'm talking about my own family, but how hard it can be when you're actually can feel what another person feels, and when another person is so lost, and you can only help them so much. And even though you stand by their side, and like me, the codependent I've always been, you just want to help, help, help. And then when you've got others in along with it, whether it's like another like ex-parent, or an ex-spouse of yours, or grandparents, or whatever it is, the other people come in and then they try to take over, and you just kind of find yourself standing there, hopefully learning to observe, not absorb, and respond and not react, like I've taught a little bit through my videos. That maybe we are able to step up to it a little bit more and pull ourselves back, instead of going along with what the narcissist person wants. Like, maybe they want that person with the drug and alcohol problem to be kicked out of the home. Um, and that person doesn't really have anywhere else to go. Luckily, there are places like where my son ended up going after his episode, after drinking a half a bottle of tequila, and just coming home from another party the day before, where he, did who knows what, all kinds of things. Um, and then these kids, they come home and they don't know how to deal with the withdrawals. And so he really laid on the bottle, and is a very angry drunk, and started setting out on my parents, telling these narcissistic types. There is going to be some pausing going on. So continuing, fighting with these narcissistic types, telling them that it's all their fault because that's what we do, when we are heavier into using. We blame it on everybody else and put the responsibility on everybody else, but have never been taught to take on the responsibility of ourselves when people like more codependent types try to take over and control over them and treat them like babies and children, and often gaslight in an attempt to help better and take care of these people. So all these people are wiping their butts for them, and they never really learn how to wipe their own butt. I know for me, I really had to leave it for a while, my narcissistic family, and begin to study and look deeper into how to deal with these types before going on. And I'm very grateful for that today. But still, these types can really torment. And when you're dealing with somebody out of control, And a lot of, and what I think what I'm trying to get at here is that his narc grandparents were trying to tell him that he was going crazy and he needed mental help. But what I've been reading in some of my addiction books is that a lot of times a person will hear voices and see auditory hallucinations, can hear voices, and feel crazy when they are using, especially really hard. And it's but it's not really their faults, and it's not really a mental condition, but it just comes along with the territory of using. I've had to explain this to my family already, and it's hard for them because with narcissists, they like to often use that you're crazy or you're unstable or dangerous a lot, when a lot of the time they're reacting because of the drugs or the alcohol or whatever it is. So yeah, he really lost, my son really lost it, and there was kind of an argument. But I've also learned one thing that you cannot really do with a narcissist, and that is to tell them to their face how nasty and horrible and how they don't give a crap, and how they're out to get you and all this stuff, and tell them how bad they are, because that's just going to make them more into a rage. And when you step foot trying to teach any kind of narcissistic client or family or whatever around them, I think it's really important for me to learn how to be with these types, because at first, when you are first understanding about narcissism, um, my thing was to go out and use when I didn't know anything about it, or how bad that they can really hurt a person. And the more I started learning about it, um, realizing finally through a couple of years of researching it, how to finally get past the grief, the crushing pain and grief that it had put me in for so long, or that it was not my fault, that I can keep building my self-esteem levels from other gaslighting as to um, just kind of putting in your head you're not good enough. They're always better at doing everything else, and I kind of like am mediocre to the way that they run things, and they're so great and they're the best at everything. It's kind of what a lot of them will shove in your face, or even put you down to your face, degrading remarks and actions through your relationship with these types. It's no wonder we can fall into areas where we no longer care about keeping our bodies healthy and putting stuff up our noses and drinking, toxic poisons. Um, when it goes beyond mediocrity. But one thing I really had to learn through this, and I would like to share, is that I've had to learn ways. I just read a book that was really great. Um, I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. I've been a little spacey. But it was how to talk to a narcissist. And to, instead of talking to them like, talking to them about things they've done wrong, sometimes often compliment them on the things that they are doing right and have done well, because they just can't really take it. They're too sensitive, and in such a pain, and that is such a painful area where they've probably always been talked down to as well. They don't like it, and it just kind of shuts it off to they can't deal with that painful area inside themselves. It's too big, so then they usually block it with like a rage or a change of conversation or whatever it is, um, usually in more threatening poses. So, kind of wanted to share that with you today, and that just some of the things that I'm learning. And as my son, uh, it got too violent between them, and my son really started hurting himself in the end. Physically was hurting himself. Um, yeah, my son, sorry, I get interrupted here. um, Ended up, so he would stop hurting himself. Um, we ended up calling the 911 and had them get a uh, ambulance out here, and not sending them to jail, but sending him to an inpatient service somewhere, at a larger inpatient service where they take in, you know, al- people that are using, or they gave him something to they usually give him something to calm down with, and it can really help with the withdrawals sometimes, with different medicines, and put and just a clinical place where he can join groups like himself, and they can really kind of gain sobriety and get a little bit of help. I know, although a person can't usually stay in these places for very long, I know it's up to like 30 days for real rehab places, but it can get them at least a little bit of help and understanding as to what, and also to their families as to why they're going through what they're going through, and what to expect of it. A place where they can calm down sometimes, and get away from situations that they find themselves in that are not safe. So there's also things like, I know in a lot of cases where people are cast out and not wanted anymore in the homes where they're using and becoming violent, or, you know, losing it, and or just whatever it is. Um, and they don't feel like they have any places to go. Um, there are also um, housing, if I can think of the name of it now, because my mind is kind of getting fuzzy. But housing for these types. Um, I'm sorry, I'm having a little tough time with this just because it's my own kid this time. Of course, there are housing where groups all join together, and live among each other, all around the place. If you can find a place like that, where you can really maybe attain work, have food, have shelter over your head. Um, if you have the right finances, or if they're free to stay at, whatever is involved in it, where groups join, and activities like AA go on, DBT, whatever groups there are to join that help. Any little bit helps that person begin to recover, and and we all begin to go through different stages of recovery, whatever that is. Um, And it helps us even more through the process of getting over the denial part where we don't think we have a problem too. Finally, how many times does it take for us, whether it's through sickness, maybe mental sick, feeling mentally sick from using um, incarceration, or even worse cases, like what happened to my older brother, where he is no longer with us. And I mean, sometimes it takes just a crucial point for us to see and awaken to what we are doing with ourselves, what we might be causing others to go through, what we are putting through others through. Uh, but mainly coming back to seeing what we are doing ourselves, why we are harming ourselves, and it a lot of times comes back to understanding. Like I read a lot these days, read and listen to a lot these days, and there are a lot about what type of home we grew up in, and understanding how we can heal ourselves. So we all need to be safe. We all need recovery. I'm glad to know that we're going to get my son today, and we're going to continue working with him. And I'm right by his side now, and I'm very glad and honored to be where I am today. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more. Peace.